Hey guys, Brian here with another video, and this video is going to be part 2 of my series on finding a job in Ireland. If you didn't see part 1, please do go back and watch that. I told you my experience on how I was able to actually go out and find a job, and also a good website you can go on if you're looking for a different style job. Now this one is going to be about trial days, specifically for service type industries is what uses trials, and I'm going to talk about some legality issues behind them, what they are, and also tips for succeeding in the trial day. So let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, what is a trial day? If you're wondering that, for me personally, I'd never heard of them. I don't even think they're a thing in the US. They're at least not a thing where I'm from in the US and California. Maybe in some other states, I'm not sure. But I'd never heard of them. So when I was told come in for a trial, I was just super confused. And so essentially a trial day is you're going in to work for a company for, on average, 1 to 3 hours at a time. And you'd go in for the company, you'd work for them 1 to 3 hours, and then they would decide after that if they want to hire you. And you can also decide if you want to continue working for that company after the trial as well, because you're not an employee, you're just working for them for a few hours to see if you're interested. And normally you don't get paid for the trial. And that is what brings us into the legality issues behind the trial day, is because you're not being paid for it. Now, technically, if you work for a company, you're supposed to be paid for them. Even over here, if you work for them, they have to pay you. By law, they have to pay you. And so trial days are not technically legal, even over here. However, on average, trial days are 1 to 3 hours. You'd go into the company, you'd be there for a few hours, you'd go home. And if you got hired, you'd sign the paperwork then. If not, you would just go home and go about the rest of your life. Now that seems okay. In my opinion, that seems okay. The company is just trying to make sure that they want to hire you, that you're worth bringing onto their team, and you're gonna be a valuable member of their team. However, some companies take that to an extreme and they bring you on for an entire week. I haven't experienced this, but when I was looking them up, I did see quite a few stories where this happened to people. They'll bring you on for an entire week of work, and then they'll say, we don't want to hire you, go home, and they don't pay you for it. Now that seems extreme, and personally, I would complain to them first, and if they don't pay me for that week long of work, I would call, I don't know what department it is, the department of, I don't know, whoever deals with employment, and I would say, hey, this company just brought me on trial for an entire week, and they didn't pay me for it, and they're not hiring me, and I would have them investigated. Because what I would imagine they're probably doing is they're going to bring somebody on every week, they're going to have them work for the entire week, not pay them, send them home. Bring somebody new in, have them work for the entire week, send them home. Have somebody else on, bring them in for the entire week, send them home. And they're just going to take advantage of the system, essentially. And so I would say something fishy is going on. If you're working for more than 1 day, I would say if it's more than 1 day of work and they keep bringing you in and they still call it a trial, something fishy is going on. You should probably have them investigated. Now, I didn't experience any of that when I was looking for a job. And I actually had 2 different trials, one at a restaurant as a waiter and one at the job I'm actually at now, and which is a restaurant that turns into a nightclub after between 10 and 11 every night. 10 o'clock is when we start the transition. 11 o'clock is usually when the lights dim down and the music starts blasting. And so that is when I work, is usually later at night. I help with the transition, and then because I'm not a waiter, so I don't help in the restaurant, but I help with the transition, and then I'm behind the bar during the nightclub. And so this brings us into the advice, the tips that I'm going to give you for getting the job when you're in the trial, is because I actually had 2 trials. One of them I didn't do so well in, one of them I did really well in, and I didn't get this job, but I did get this job. So I'll just kind of tell you some advice that I can give you through some personal experiences that I have had in both. Now, number one, this also is the same, very similar advice, or the same advice that I gave you in my last video. Be confident no matter what you're doing, pretty much in life in general, but in this situation specifically, because that's what I'm talking about right now, be confident in the trial day. No matter what you're doing, be confident in doing it. Even if you're doing it wrong, you don't have to do everything right. You can do it wrong, just be confident in doing it. And then if somebody sees you and you're doing it wrong, if the manager is watching you and is like, hey, you're doing it wrong, he's going to tell you to change the way you're doing it, but at least you were doing something confidently and he can correct you from there. So that's kind of even like two different pieces of advice. Find something to do, don't ever stand there, and be confident about doing it. And that's three pieces of advice. You don't have to do it right. You don't have to do everything perfectly, because they'll correct you about it and you can change the way you're doing it. But don't stand there and do nothing. Find something to do and be confident about the way you're doing it. So I'll kind of tell you what I did wrong in the restaurant and what I did right in the nightclub using those three pieces of advice. Be confident, find something to do. You don't have to always do it right, because as long as you're giving them something to assess, as long as you're giving them a skill to assess, they can watch you, they can correct you the way you're doing it, but at least they can see that you're able to take initiative. Now, in the restaurant where I did not get the job, what kind of happened is, I don't want to blame the manager, I don't want to blame the employee, but they also did kind of have a part in it, but it might have been my fault, because on my resume, I kind of fudged it a tiny bit to make it seem like, where I worked in movie theater, I kind of made it sound like I was a waiter at this, and I would always go in and bring food in the theaters, instead of that just being like a random thing that we did every now and then because a customer was mad. And I made it seem like I had more waiting experience than I actually had. And so the manager thought that I was more experienced in being a waiter than I actually was, so I wouldn't need as much micromanaging. And I think that's why they were kind of like hands off on it. And that was a huge factor in me not getting the job, because when I didn't know what to do and I wasn't doing something right, nobody was standing there saying, oh, do this, oh, do this, oh, do this. They were just kind of watching me, and I wasn't able to find things to do on my own because I didn't know what to do on my own. So I was just kind of standing there, trying to stand up straight and look professional, but I was just kind of standing there doing nothing, watching the other employees, trying to figure out what they were doing so I can copy them. And anytime I was doing something, I wasn't confident about it, because I'm not too familiar with what to do as a waiter. I was a waiter 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Oh, shoot. Yeah, no, about 5 years ago I was a waiter, but that was a while ago. That was a long time ago. And it was a short amount of time, and so I kind of forgot what to do. It wasn't like a second nature to me, as the manager probably thought it would be. So I wasn't confident in what I was doing. I wasn't able to find things to do on my own, so she wasn't able to assess any skills that I had. If I was setting the table every now and then, the only reason I would set the table is because I was standing there for long enough that the manager finally said, hey, go set the table. So I was like, oh yeah, I should have set the table. So I set the table, but I wasn't setting it right. And rather than telling me how to set the table, the employee who was watching me, because I was kind of shadowing someone at the same time in a way, but he was also doing his own thing and just kind of keeping an eye on me. That employee, rather than telling me how to set the table, just said, oh, you're doing it wrong, go stand over there and I'll set it. So then instead of me learning how to set the table right for next time, I was just standing over in the corner doing nothing while he was setting the table. So that was kind of a factor in it as well, is I didn't know what to do. I wasn't doing things confidently, and I wasn't being corrected in the way I was doing things. So I was more just standing off in the corner doing nothing. And so there wasn't really a lot of skills for them to assess that I was giving them. Contrast that to the nightclub that I'm working at now. Immediately the manager was walking me around the entire building, showing me where everything was, and he said, you're obviously going to forget a lot of this because the place is huge. And he was showing me like everything. It wasn't like the basics. It was like where everything was. So it was hard to remember. But he said, if you start working here, you're going to get the hang of it within the first week, because you'll just be running back and forth so much. But I'll show you where everything is now, just to give you a basic outline of the restaurant and of the venue. So then after we finished that, he set me up on the table to start cutting limes, because we have every drink that's made, if it's like a gin and tonic or a Jameson ginger, or I don't know, a vodka cranberry. Basically, if you're making a mixed drink, you're going to throw a lime in the glass. So we go through a lot of limes. So he brought me 3 or 4 boxes of limes, and he brought me this big contraption where I would put the limes into, and then I would push it down. And so all he said was, start cutting limes, put them in here, and push it down to cut it, and then throw another one in and push it down to cut it. And now that's what I was doing. I was tossing them in and I was pushing it down. And after I did a few, the manager, who was standing right there talking to me, and we were kind of talking about, like why I moved here, why I'm in Ireland, what I'm looking for, what I'm most excited for. So just a normal conversation. And after me cutting a few limes, he corrected me. So I was doing something, and then he was able to correct me on the way I was doing it. He said, don't just throw the limes in, put the limes in vertically. Make sure the 2 notches on the limes are up and down. So when you push it down, the line that's going straight through the middle of the lime is where it gets cut through. And then so after that, I was able to put the limes in straight. And then a few limes might have gone through that had the stickers on them. So then he said, oh, hey, don't forget to take the stickers off. So then, I was taking the stickers off the next time, and then pushing the lime down. I took the sticker off, and then I pushed the lime down. And that was kind of huge, because I was doing something. He was kind of standing there able to correct me, but he didn't have to micromanage. He just, I wasn't doing it perfect, and then he tweaked the way I was doing it, rather than him telling me, how to use the contraption in the first place and going through the whole spiel of it. So I think that was big. And also, I kind of showed that I could take initiative in that time as well, because in the box of limes, every now and then you'll get a rotting lime or an old lime that obviously shouldn't be cut, that shouldn't be given out to customers. So rather than me finding a rotten lime and saying, well, either putting it in the machine and cutting it, which would have been like, what the heck were you thinking? Or taking it and saying, excuse me, should I throw this lime out or should I cut it? Rather than doing either of those two, I just had enough common sense and confidence to say, okay, this lime is rotting. So I picked it up, tossed it in the trash, grabbed another lime, and then just continued doing the job from there, taking the stickers off and doing the job from there. So I was able to show them that, I have common sense. I can do things without you micromanaging me. I'm going to try and keep up to the standards that you're trying to obviously set in your restaurant and your nightclub. And so I think that was a big part of me getting the job, is just showing that in that small thing of picking up the lime and throwing it in the trash instead of asking him about it. Because then that kind of shows that, after I know what to do, you're not going to need to keep watch of me. And then after he left, so that was huge. After he left, I was kind of shadowing this other guy who had come in around that time. I got in earlier so he could walk me around the building. So then by the time I finished the lime, somebody else came in and I was shadowing him. So then the manager didn't need to stay near me and watch me the whole night. He can just glance over at me every now and then and maybe talk to that employee at the end of the night and see how I was doing, instead of micromanaging me the whole night. And when I was shadowing him, I was also trying to look for things to do on my own based on what he had told me, what the manager told me and what the employee had told me throughout the night. So the job is basically, wash glasses, stock the fridges, make sure there's straws and napkins, and then if you're out of limes, run to the back and cut limes really quick. If you don't have enough from earlier in the night, change the trash cans. Just make sure the whole bar is set up and running smoothly throughout the night. So I was doing this, and halfway through the night, they kind of sent me on my own and said, okay, now you know what to do, go and do it on your own. And rather than, freaking out and asking everyone for help and hey, excuse me, I don't know what to do here. Should I stock the fridges? They had already told me what to do. So I was able to, stock the fridges. If the fridges were running out, I was able to stock the fridges. I was able to clean the glasses. Anytime glasses would be set in front of me, or if there was empty glasses throughout the bar, I can go and pick them up. And I was able to set the glasses in the tray, put the tray in the dishwasher, and then unload the clean dishes throughout throughout the bar for the bartenders. I was able to do all this stuff. I had common sense, and I had enough common sense to figure out what to do if they didn't tell me, and I was able to have confidence enough to just do it, and then they can watch me from there and assess what I was doing and see if they wanted to hire that on. And so that was kind of, 2 different trial days, 2 completely different outcomes based on level of confidence, based on me finding things to do, and even if I wasn't doing it right, finding things to do so they can correct me and they can assess my skills. Contrast that to the restaurant where I wasn't finding things to do, I wasn't doing things right, and they weren't correcting me, and also I wasn't confident about anything I was doing in the restaurant. So that is 2 different trial days, some advice for how to get them based on my personal experience. I hope that was interesting. I hope that helps when you get here, if you do encounter this trial that I'm speaking of. And I hope that if you have any questions, you're going to ask me in the comments below. Please do feel free. If you're wondering something, don't hesitate. Just let me know, and then I'll try and answer it. Or if it seems to be a common issue, I'll try and make a new video about it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I talk about comments, questions, concerns. If you like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, I will see you guys in our next video.